The Iron Islands are an archipelago located in the northwestern region of Westeros, west of the Cape of Eagles in the Sunset Sea. And according to records, this archipelago is comprised of 44 islands, with the major islands being Old Week, Great Week, Pike, Harlaw, Orkmont, Black Tide, and Salt Cliff. The Iron Islands are some of the most inhospitable regions in the whole of Westeros, as they are mostly cold, humid, and rocky. Due to these harsh conditions, these islands don't support much plant life, and because of this, it's believed that both the children of the forest and the giants never resided on them. The people that eventually settled on these islands would also become as hard, and in most cases, as harsh and cruel as their islands. Though most foreigners to the Iron Islands believe that the Ironborn were named after the iron ore that is abundant on the Iron Islands, according to the Ironborn, this is not the case, for they believe that it was the islands that were named after them. Many Ironborn claim that they originally came from beneath the sea, but in truth, they are first men that migrated to the Iron Islands during the Dorne Age. Upon reaching the Iron Islands, the people that would later on be called the Ironborn would develop their own traditions and norms that in time became markedly different from the rest of the first men. For instance, the people of the Iron Islands came to worship the drowned god, who the Ironborn believe created them and bought them from the sea. This greatly differs from the rest of the first men, who, though had their own gods when they migrated to Westeros, eventually came to worship the old gods of the children of the forest. The drowned god has several priests on the Iron Islands that preach his word, and they denounce the worship of other gods. Though the Ironborn would in time form great ruling houses, all sailors are revered on the Iron Islands, and every captain is a king upon his ship. The most celebrated people among the Ironborn are the Reavers, and these are savage warriors that sail in their longships to the mainlands, or Greenlands, as the mainland of Westeros is referred to by the Ironbone, in order to raid the people that live there. This act of raiding is referred to as paying the iron price by the Reavers among the Ironborn, for they use iron weapons to forcefully take what they want, instead of using monetary means. During the Dawn Age and the Age of Heroes that followed it, the first men that lived on the coastal regions of Westeros were constantly attacked by the Ironborn Reavers, but they unfortunately used bronze weapons that could not withstand the iron weapons of the Ironborn, and were therefore easily defeated by the Ironborn Reavers. After these brutal raids, these savage Ironborn Reavers would then sail back to the Iron Islands upon their ships that would be laden with food, lumber, gems, thralls, and salt wives. Those Ironborn that had stayed behind would then have to pay the gold price in order to attain some of the bounty that had been bought back from the Greenlands. The thralls were forced to work on the few farm fields on the Iron Islands, or in the dark and cold iron ore mines. Whereas all thralls were despised on the Iron Islands, farm thralls had better lives than the thralls that worked in the mines, as many of them were even allowed to marry, and sire children that were seen as Ironborn. The salt wives, on the other hand, were nubile young women that were taken by a Reaver, and such women would be wedded to the Reaver by a priest of the drowned god. Ironborn men were allowed to marry as many salt wives as they could get, and children from such unions would be regarded as true-born Ironborn. However, Ironborn men were only allowed to marry one rock wife, who was a true-born Ironborn woman, and children from such a union would come above all others. It is not recorded if the Ironborn suffered through the cataclysmic long night that devastated the world of ice and fire. It's possible that this calamity never reached the islands, for like they were depicted in the TV adaptation, the undead armies of the Great Other might not have been able to swim, and because of this, these creatures were unable to get to the Iron Islands, which in turn spared the Ironborn the horrors of the long night. But if the long night lasted for an entire generation, like it's stated in the books, then Iron Man's Bay might have frozen over to allow the forces of the Great Other to attack the Iron Islands. However, even if this was the case, there are no tales among the Ironborn that can give an insight on how they survived the long night. Though it's more than likely the long night did reach the Iron Islands, It's possible that the Ironborn survived this dark period in a different way. Whereas most people in Westeros, and indeed all the people elsewhere in the world of ice and fire, were hunted down by the evil forces of the Great Other and had to fight the undead armies in order to survive, the Ironborn might have unknowingly been the servants of the Great Other. This might have happened due to their worship of the drowned god, that itself has been condemned by Moqorro to be one of the servants of the Great Other. An indication of this might be the infamous phrase of, "What is dead may never die, but rises harder and stronger," that the priests of the drowned gods say, especially when they are initiating someone into their faith. But this phrase might have a darker meaning that the Ironborn are unaware of, for it might have first been used to refer to the undead armies of the Great Other. The undead armies were mindless, reanimated people who were raised up to become stronger and more endurant than when they were still alive. It's possible that during the long night, the Ironborn viewed the undead that were coming up their frozen shores from the Greenlands to have been coming from the halls of their drowned god. And because of this, the Ironborn revered these undead creatures, not knowing that they were, in truth, the undead armies of the Great Other. The Ironborn might then have got into a blood pact with the drowned god, in which they agreed to offer up more people, likely the first men from the Greenlands to the sea, and these unfortunate souls that were sacrificed to the drowned god would then join the undead armies of the Great Other. Though there is no direct evidence to support this theory, the now deceased Craster was shown to offer up his own sons to the White Walkers in order to stay their wrath, and the Ironborn might also have offered human sacrifices to the drowned god in order to survive the long night. Whatever happened to the Ironborn during the long night must remain a mystery until future books are released, but what is known is that the Ironborn survived this dark period. Like in the rest of Westeros, noble houses would rise up on the Iron Islands during the Dawn Age and the Age of Heroes. Some of these houses would rise to kingship, establishing a realm that stretched from Bear Island in the north to the Arbor in the Reach. The very first king of the Iron Islands is said to have been the Grey King. This legendary man is not named, but he is greatly revered on the Iron Islands due to the many great deeds that are attributed to him. Records state that before becoming the king of the Iron Islands, this man taught the Ironborn how to fish, but his greatest deed was his slaying of Naga, the sea dragon. This incredible beast is said to have been powerful enough to destroy entire islands and kill krakens. After slaying this creature, its corpse washed up on the shores of Old Week, where he turned it into his court. He adorned the first driftwood crown and declared himself the king of the Iron Islands, and after which it is said that he married a mermaid. It is said that the Grey King would go on to rule the Iron Islands for 1,000 years, and that he sired 100 sons with his mermaid queen. With the exception of House Goodbrother, all great houses of the Iron Islands claim to descend from the sons of the Grey King. The Grey King's rule is said to have come to an end when he abdicated his throne and walked into the sea in order to travel to the halls of the drowned god. Though this story can't be verified since the Ironborn were illiterate at this time, it is still important to point out that there are massive petrified bones on Naga's Hill on Old Week in the current events of the Iron Islands. After the drowning of the Grey King, his many descendants fought each other for decades over who would rule all the islands. Grey King's descendants failed to unite the Iron Islands. The islands were divided up into independent states that were ruled by two kings, and these were the Rock Kings and the Salt Kings. These two kings were usually father and son, and the elder Rock King would hold sway over the island, while the Salt King, who was the crown prince, controlled the fleet. However, this arrangement was not followed by all the Ironborn, for on some islands the Rock and Salt Kings would come from different houses, and upon the death of any one of the two kings, a king's moot would be called for by the priests of the drowned god in order for a successor to be determined. Every man on that specific island that owned a boat was allowed to take part in the king's moot. However, none of these methods brought peace to the Iron Islands, for the Ironborn remained hostile to each other for centuries. Peace and unity on the Iron Islands would only be achieved by a priest of the drowned god called Galen Whitestaff. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment and subscribe to the channel.